Hey everybody, let's just jump right into it. We'd prefer, we were talking beforehand, that we make this as interactive as possible. So rather than us talk up here for a while and then stop at the end and take questions from the group, I think our preference would be if there's something that you want to ask, or if there's something you want to challenge, which would be even better because we're hoping for some controversy and dispute. Just raise your hand and we'll grab you, okay? So maybe quickly we'll let each of our three fine panelists just quickly introduce themselves and what their company does so everyone has context, and we'll jump right into it.
Hello, my name is Bill Janukas. I'm a founder and chief product officer of Haywire. Haywire is a virtual mobile company. We give you a US-based phone number that allows you to text and soon receive phone calls on it. We're one of the largest Boston ad providers as a publisher. We do 1 billion ad impressions a month now. So we've been around for about 2.5 years. We have about 3.5 million users.
Hello, I'm Vicky Zabala. I'm Vice President of Marketing at Fiksu. And Fiksu is a mobile app advertising platform. We help major brands, advertisers, game developers, and publishers promote their apps across a variety of app stores, including the Google Play Store and Apple's App Store. We also own our own proprietary ad network called Free My Apps, and it's the largest US-based incentivized ad network.
And I'm Kip Jones from Skyhook Wireless. And we provide a location infrastructure for apps and networks to get quality location and location intelligence. We've been around for about 10 years now and provide location across millions of mobile devices out there.
Cool. Any questions for our panelists? Just kidding. I'll jump right in. So, Vicky, start us off here. This is the Big Idea series. So tell us about a big idea that you guys are working on.
Excellent. So as we all know, we're all here because of mobile, right? It's pervasive. It has capabilities beyond anything else in terms of a channel and a medium in order to reach consumers. It's with us every day. We wake up, I sleep with it, I wake up to it. I'm on the airplane, I'm in the bathroom with my mobile device. Most of us
TMI.
are. I'm in the airplane bathroom with my mobile device. So out of this, how do we reach those consumers? And in looking at that, one of the big issues and challenges that we're seeing today is basically the flow of those advertising dollars. The flow of advertising dollars is not at the point where it should be. It should be coming towards mobile. We're still struggling to fight with traditional, to fight with digital in order to convince brands to come into mobile. And so at Fiksu, we decided to undertake a study. And basically that study dictated in terms of not just looking at CPM metrics in terms of cost effectiveness, right? Impressions in terms of what mobile impressions are. Basically what we ended up finding is we're looking at CPMs that are much more cost effective than anything else, any other traditional medium. Cost per clicks that are more cost effective as well. And we went into looking into what we define as cost per engagement. And this is a new metric looking at the industry. Cost per engagement isn't new in the online, but it is in mobile. And basically we looked at app installs and beyond the download. We're looking at actions and events that were happening. And these are folks that are coming back subsequent times, registering, making in-app purchases. And in the comparison that we looked at, the cost to engage somebody within mobile, specifically within mobile apps, and I will warn you, if you were to walk away with something today, this is it. It's 1/10 of the cost. It's pennies, virtually pennies to engage somebody on mobile versus traditional.
All right, cool. And just before I let some of our other guys talk about their big ideas, just so we understand the audience here. So how many folks out here are in a role where they're on the purchasing side of mobile advertising? So you're a marketer, you're an agency, brand manager. And how many folks in this room are on the sell side of mobile advertising? And how many folks in this room have nothing to do whatsoever with mobile advertising? Okay, cool. So yeah, we'll get the good questions from the non-mobile advertising folks. There's about 4 or 5 of you in here. We're going to get back to kind of this idea of cost per engagement, but maybe first let's turn over to Bill. So what's big in your world, so folks can get some perspective on what you're working on?
So as Vicky said, traditional and digital have been the core of what people are spending money on. We have so much more information in the mobile world then we know as a mobile texting app, we know where you're located, what you're texting about. So I'm walking down the street and I'm texting my friends, hey, what time do you want to do dinner tonight? I should be able to get an ad that tells me, Pizza Hut is down the street and here's a coupon for $1 off a large pizza. And there's nobody buying ads currently in mobile. Us as a publisher, we have all this information available and no one's spending their money buying those ads. So we're hoping that the industry actually becomes more intelligent over the next year and really helps us drive up CPMs in our space.
So now, about half the people in this room said that they're buyers of mobile advertising, and you just said that you're hoping they become more intelligent. So in a way, you're saying that half the people in this room aren't as smart as they should be. Does anybody on the buy side want to talk about or ask Bill any questions about why you might not be buying? Yeah, sir.
Interesting. So everybody knows the dirty secret. We assume it's 20% are fraudulent. That still doesn't mean that the rest of those clicks couldn't be more intelligent. Still, 80% of your clicks are based on someone that said, this is interesting, I want to know more about this, and they're random ads being sent to them. The most information that we get for most of the ad networks, or the requests that we get from them, is age and sex. No one's asking for location, or very few are, and no one's asking at all for context. So
Now, Bill, let's just stay on this. So I think people should jump in here. I think what a lot of people on the buy side would say is, yeah, it's true we're not buying down to square block locations to do super hyper local targeting because we haven't really gotten past the basics yet of being able to get critical mass on reach to be able to have meaningful size ad buys, basic targeting of basic demographics, be able to identify uniques and know how many uniques we're buying. What would you say to some of those folks?
I don't believe in any of those statements that you just made. We know uniques.
It wasn't me. I was just speaking for those
sure.
guys.
We know uniques. We know people coming back. Unfortunately, email is one of the most unique IDs that we have right now that we're using. We know their location. We know their context. I don't see that hurdle. And as far as breadth, yeah, there's probably not one app besides Facebook that can actually get you as many users as you want. But as an ecosystem as a whole, there's hundreds of millions of users using smartphones in the United States. You should be able to target throughout a majority of the daily apps that people are using.
So before I move to Kip, just let me give you a chance. So give an example to folks in this room of the kind of buy that they could do with you, where you've already solved that kind of. Let me give you a chance to strut your wares here.
Sure. All right. So Dunkin' Donuts is one of my favorite brands. Wearing the T-shirt today. We could do a Dunkin' Donuts buy, and what it'll enable the users, if they're using the app, our app has on average about 22 minutes of usage a day. It's a very high active app. People going in, send a text, get out, send a text, get out. We could target a campaign 6 a.m. to 9 a.m. in the local location and tell you where the nearest Dunkin' Donuts is. And because we actually own the app, we can have the whole background of the phone, not a full page app, but the background of the phone actually looks like a cup of coffee is being poured. It's a really rich ability to do that. We as a publisher don't have the ability, or currently don't know how to get to the people that are creatives at the agencies to enable us to do a campaign like that.
Anybody from the agency side want to comment or ask any questions or put any input in here? Anybody from Dunkin' want to right now just make a purchase order and get this thing done? All right, let's move over. You're a quiet bunch. Come on, let's go. Let's wake it up. Kip, so my understanding is Skyhook Wireless has been around for about 10 years. So how is it possible you're on a panel of new ideas?
Well, they have some good connections, and so. But actually, it's actually a very good question. We've been doing location for mobile devices now for 10 years, and we really started at a very low level. And I think the big idea here is there's a lot of location floating around in the ecosystem, and a lot of it is derived from who knows what, right? The quality of the location. So the part of the problem, I think, is that the match of data to buys is not there because a lot of that data is not quality. So part of the problem is getting that quality into the ecosystem, being able to identify that quality data, location data, context, as you were talking about, Bill. All of that information is available, but it's hard to tell the good from the bad, which drives down the actual match that can be made today.
And so, do you have any good examples for folks on who's doing interesting things using location data intelligently?
Sure. There's a lot of people out there right now. I think one example, I think, is that some ad networks have had to get to the point where they're scrubbing location data themselves to find out amongst all the data that's coming through what is quality location. That's a bad sign that there's a lot of injection of low quality data. And not everybody is taking that kind of approach of actually trying to find good data from bad. The myth that that you can just throw location data in there and you'll get a bump on your CPMs. Well, great, that works for a while until you drive it down because of low quality data, right? So I think one of my missions is to increase the quality of that location and also the quality of the context that can be derived from that location. Because if you're trying to drive context from bad location, you end up with bad context.
So 3% of our U.S. users live in 90210. So location, self-reported, is horrendous data. And we've seen that for years. It's, you really need to have location services turned on. You need to be able to track down to, a zip, maybe that's a square mile wide, but 90210, our #1 geolocation of a free texting application.
And I'm going to add in that location is just one filter that's way down in the funnel. There's many other factors that you could look at data, right? And the fact is that the cost to advertise within mobile is so cheap right now. And the people that are first movers, the mobile disruptors, and I'll give an example of this, is, for instance, we saw Priceline come in the online world. They've completely been disrupted by Hotels Tonight or Hotels.com. Took over the mobile environment. This is very true in the mobile sphere. You can simply do a whole mobile takeover of everybody's smartphone in a weekend, in a night. I mean, that is extreme. Irrelevant of location, there's also behavioral and intent. So there's some other factors that should be considered.
So is the way to interpret that that right now there's so much supply of mobile inventory, why bother trying to get super precise using specific location and knowing that someone is in a specific spot when you can do much broader buys at lower CPMs and get more bang for the buck that way? Is that sort of what you're saying?
There's some truth to that. And there's also effectiveness in terms of measurement now. There's technologies out there in order to determine what the impact is on your overall media buy. So that's impacted for media buyers themselves and the agencies as well as the marketers out there. So I think that's impactful. We can also look at folks that have been in this industry within mobile beyond brands, which is games. Games have changed their strategies over times. And when games first came out, basically in terms of brands, we can look at, they would promote a game after a movie would come out. And they would support this movie with that. And folks like Paramount and DreamWorks have now switched that strategy in terms of coming out with an app that is game oriented in order to now promote the movie and encourage engagement. So there's a lot of interest here.
So Bill, what Vicky was saying there is somewhat opposite of the argument you're making, which is that there's all these great targeted geolocation focused ways to be able to do new things on mobile. So Vicky's taking the other side of that, which is, why bother with that? You can do these big, huge buys and drive downloads and engagement at really low prices. So why muck around with location or targeting? So you want to take it at her there?
So Jeff's been trying to get us to be controversial for the past 2 days. Good attempt. Vicky's point is very accurate. Depending on what the brand's goal is, that you can do a complete buy and buy out the entire weekend, and everybody opens their smartphone will see your brand's ads. The location-based services ads that we're talking about are more targeted. They're not this takeover campaign. I'm running a 6-month campaign to grow brand awareness, grow a product, launch a product in the market. So there's both. Mobile allows for both this great, I'm going to take over every single eyeball, and also should allow for, hey, I want to target the person that's at this location, that's interested in this, and that I know a lot about who they are.
Yeah, I was going to say, and I think it also, location takes it beyond the here and now. Location informs as you were talking about, behavioral understanding and context of that user. So I have to know at this moment where this person is so I can drive my ad to them is not necessarily the only way you can use location to inform your buys.
What does that mean? I'm not sure people know what that means.
So that it just means that if I was at Starbucks at some time during the last month, well, there's likely that's going to happen again, right? They're more amenable to that type of a purchase, and so that's a location informed, not necessarily a location based ad type of targeting.
And I would agree with Kip. I think that's extremely.
I thought we talked about this, guys. There's no agreeing on this panel.
Well, there is behavioral intent. Personally, I'm a Dunkin' Donuts fan, and anyone out there, I have a medium black coffee every day with 5 sugars. And if I was served a coupon every day because I was in 5 feet or a foot or right in front of the waitress, then I would still order my coffee, and it's actually a loss in revenue opportunity for them. So I do worry about that in terms of just focusing on location.
And let's get off of location for a little bit specifically, but just talk more in your experience as a marketer driving downloads and engagement. So what are things that before people use Fiksu that don't have the benefit of your experience, what are some of the mistakes that people make on the marketing side?
Mistakes, that's a good question. So I would say thinking that your app is going to sustain its visibility within the App Store purely because of the IP you have behind yourself. It could be a big blockbuster movie that came out, or it could be, the next big texting app. And you could be featured in the App Store, but soon after that, you're soon to plummet within the App Store. And so what we see at Fiksu is consistently people coming to us, and hopefully before they launch their campaigns, in terms of how can I sustain that visibility within the App Store. And basically what we see at Fiksu is that for every paid app user that you're acquiring, you're actually receiving at least 1 to 2 users free organically just because of the visibility you have within the App Store.
And Bill,
I was going to interject on that, not to be
Why don't you
controversial. There was around the playoffs, the football playoffs this year, there was a Japanese company that came into the United States and spent probably $50 million on advertising their new chat and talking app. It's a peer-to-peer app. There's 5 of these that get released every week. And they're a gaming company out of Japan, and they decided, we're going to enter the U.S. market the same way we entered Japan, which is we're going to buy ads. And they bought, Super Bowl ads. They bought American Idol ads. They bought NFL playoff ads. They were spending an absolute atrocious amount of money for the mobile space. They jumped to number 6 in the store. Within a week of their ads being stopped, they're out of the top 1,000. Their strategy was completely not mobile and not correct at all in the mobile space. So it's really interesting to see other people come into the space that don't necessarily know it. It was a tremendous mistake. At $50 million, you probably could have given it to Vicky. She would have kept you number 1 in the store for a year.
So besides giving the $50 million to Vicky, if you're the head of marketing there, be more specific, because I'm sure lots of folks here are making buys and maybe are not making $50 million mistakes, but maybe are making. What's your advice for a very different way that someone could have thought about that?
There are Fiksu is a great opportunity for people coming into the market if they have a big enough budget in order to go high in the store. There are other ways of branding using other applications out there that have done this before. I would say do your research before you go and spend all that money, and a lot of people haven't been doing that recently. Calm is the name of the application that launched in January. There's a great app site that we go to every day called App Annie. App Annie allows you to track where your app sits today and historically from the beginning of time. You'll see the most awkward spikes in there. You can definitely tell when people are paying for a Fiksu bump and when people are growing organically and they really do have a viral application. But I guess intelligence and research would be the number 1 thing for each mobile category.
And Vicky, I'm guessing that if you saw the apps that had the most sustainability, what you'd also see is that those apps have the best engagement metrics, which is what you guys are really trying to focus on. And when you were describing what you guys do, at least it seems somewhat straightforward that it's not important to just measure your downloads. It's important to measure your engagement within those downloads. Why wouldn't all marketers adopt that and use that metric as a key metric? What's the challenge in that?
The biggest challenge lately has just been purely in tracking within mobile. So there's been studies that have said that cross marketers surveyed that 47% of them don't know purely how to track mobile in the effectiveness of it. I think across marketing abroad, it's always been an issue. Proving up to your CEO or the executive level board is how has marketing provided revenue to the business. And looking at engagement metrics and things beyond a download will help you do so. And so at Fiksu, we take the stance at looking at actions and events that happen after a download. Because if you're purely looking at downloads, you could run into instances where users aren't as loyal to your app or aren't coming back to your app, and they're purely doing it for other cases. And so at Fiksu, we look at actions that happen that indicate some loyalty value. And for us, we look at our advertisers to define that.
So when you're talking to an advertiser and saying, "Hey, you should be measuring engagement," what would be the answer you might get back and say, "Well, no, we're not ready to adopt that"? Like, what does someone say to that?
That there's possibilities in measuring it. At our company, we're able to provide one comprehensive view, which they might have seen before. We can look across social channels such as Twitter and Facebook. We can look across their press releases and blog posts in terms of tracking, and then as well as their paid media advertising. So I think that's very comprehensive in terms of a view and what's applicable to a marketer today in terms of reporting back to their executive board.
And so, go ahead, Bill.
So as a mobile publisher, we've used Fiksu in the past. We've used a bunch of different methods. I think one of the most interesting tools is from a local company called Localytics. They do a great job of actually breaking down your data and telling you how much retention you have, how often your users are coming back to use the application. And we've actually now correlate all our marketing spend to see how long those people have stayed on. What's their average life expectancy? How much usage? And then for us is how many total ads do they actually see? So for a user who's coming in once a day but only spending 1 second in the app versus users that are coming in once every other day spending 22 minutes in the app, that translates into 66 ad impressions for us. So we actually use a bunch of different tools, Localytics being one of them, to actually measure the value of our users.
I'm looking around for people to interrupt with some questions or comments or thoughts. Chris, you look a little glazed there. Can we help you out? You're here.
This might be more. This might be more towards out of app and more towards the mobile website experience. Obviously, attribution's been a very big issue for most people in the room. How do you go about measuring mobile interactions in between conversions when conversions are happening within different channels, or whether it be an app or on a desktop site?
Good question. That's why no one wants to answer it.
So at Fiksu, we're purely app focused. But within that, what we see is that an app is persistent. It's wherever the mobile device goes. And almost a mobile commerce site is a one-time instance. The tracking is pretty similar. It's easily implemented. We could obviously be able to transpire to that type of platform. But in terms of an app, that icon is always on your phone. So if you're looking at impressions, every time somebody pulls up their phone, that icon is there.
We have a desktop app, a web-based app that allows you to send and receive text messages from the web. And we still don't have any tools that allow us to track usage via our ad partners on both web and mobile at the same time. We track our users, but there's no tool that allows an AdSense ad on the PC to actually track back to anything that the person was doing on his mobile device before.
And I'm curious for the audience here, for those of you who are on the buy side, how many would say that the number one barrier to you spending more money in mobile advertising would be you can't get enough reach in a particular ad buy? So it's not a reach problem. How many would say it's because you can't track uniques? It's not a unique problem. How many would say it's because you cannot you can't use location out of concerns around privacy or issues related to privacy or measurement. So you're all spending
Can we
as
have
much
the-
money as you possibly
Jeff,
can.
maybe we can have all the buyers stand up.
Yeah.
So that we
No,
maybe
I don't
get
want.
fresh
No,
air
no.
or something.
It's. Guy, we have a question there on the right.
I guess I'll just be the devil's advocate. I sell, so I'm on your guys' side. But I don't need to do anything else in mobile because I use Google, and I can spend everything I want with Google. I don't need anything else. And if there's a technology that hasn't been invented yet, it's only a matter of time before Google will invent it anyway. So why switch to a different ad server when it's ultimately going to be, I'm going to be able to use DFA anyway pretty soon. So it's almost I don't have enough budget to do all these things yet. And by the time I do have enough budget, the solution will be there, and it'll be easy for me to do what I'm doing now.
Got it. So the venture capitalists in the room who are investing in new ideas should basically go home because Google's got it all. And
Aren't they buying? Isn't everyone building so Google buys them anyway? So
I suppose. Any other comments on that? Kip, do you want to talk a little bit about? I know we touched on this a little bit, but do you want to talk a little bit about privacy concerns? Back on this topic of, well, you can do some pretty interesting things with direct information around location and derived information from location. Doesn't that get us into creepy waters of privacy and data protection?
Well, I think that if anybody was at the previous panel about privacy, a lot of it is around expectation and what information you collect, how you use it, how you share it. So a lot of privacy is not surprising people, and it's telling them upfront what you're going to do and then doing what you say, right? So, but it does bring in the creepy factor if you use location in a creepy way. I mean, there's good ways to use it and there's bad ways to use it. So I think there's some responsibility when you have that location information to take care of it. And so yes, it does bring it up, but I don't think it's a no-fly zone. We have to be very clear about how this is being done and what's being done with it, how it's shared. I think that, at least personally, it's creepy to me when things happen and I have not been informed about them. That's the creepy line for me. If I'm aware of it, and I've gone through hundreds of apps and read through what they say they're going to do, and then if they do something different, I'm not so happy.
I also think it's a generational thing. So our 20-something and teen users that are using our application are 3 times more likely to turn on location-based services on the iPhone device than people over the age of 30.
But you did get parental consent for those.
They were
under
13 years and over, right?
So, Bill, actually, while you've got the mic, I want to go back to this gentleman's question who says, "Look, I could everything I want to do, I can do on Google, so I just don't need to bother with that many other alternative ideas. And if there's a cool idea out there, by the time it gets to scale, Google will have bought the company or taken or built it themselves." When we were talking beforehand, you had mentioned that you thought one of the challenges for the mobile advertising market is that there's still a distinction between mobile as a special separate budget from digital, and still there's many more dollars in digital than in mobile. But the point, which may be true, but the point that this gentleman was making says maybe that's not the problem. Maybe the problem is it's digital. It's just all going to Google. It's not really the fact that it's separated between mobile and web. What are your thoughts there?
So, Kip, can you get location on a Google Safari browser web search?
Yeah, you can.
By
But-
default, though, when I do the search, it's not given to me, right?
No, you have to get the pop-up
Right. So
every time.
the benefit of working with an app just from a location-based services is we've already got that permission to give it to the ad networks. So that is an intrinsic value in having that ahead of time. The other thing is, depending on what app I'm in, I have a large speaking Spanish population in the United States using our app. They're getting a free texting and voice service. So they're demographically not as affluent as the majority of iPhone users. We did a campaign for a large bank this year that did a Visa program. The success rate was 3.5%. I mean, the numbers are incredible. That targeting, knowing the app and what they do and what the app's core users are like is so important, I believe, for advertisers. It allows you to get to a population really quickly, too.
So, Vicky, let's start to bring this home. Let's look to the future. So you guys do a ton of work on the application side with lots of great marketers. When you think about what the world looks like in a couple of years, what's different 2 years from now than today?
Certainly, the brands that haven't taken advantage of it yet will start to see that these costs have risen. It's going to be difficult for them to enter. There's going to be an extreme barrier, even if they have those millions of dollars. So they've lost out on that opportunity. 2 to 3 years from now, I think that's going to increase in terms of the competitiveness, just like we saw in the online world. The same thing's happening in mobile right now. The other piece is, and you had asked earlier about kind of things that we saw that marketers came to us and they were doing wrong or whatnot, is the fact of, and we haven't spoken about, because the folks I think on this board are mainly local folks, is social. Social is a huge component, and it's free. It's
Are you saying
viral.
local folks aren't social?
Haha. Well, not necessarily, but that there could be loyal people to your brand, to your company that you're not taking advantage of. And there's a proper way to introduce social into that mechanism. And that's basically in terms of a K factor. So if you want to introduce another metric in terms of my cost per engagement that I introduced earlier, is the K factor. So everyone can pull out their phone and Google that. But the K factor basically measures the social impact of your brand. And it looks at the number of people you share your brand with and the conversion rates that produce. And that's all free. So if people aren't monetizing based on your app itself in terms of advertising or in-app purchases, make sure that there's a loyalty component in which you can serve them basically incentives in order to share with their friends and whatnot. And that will come 3, 5, 10 folds back to your company.
And Kip, so 2 years from now, how will smart marketers be using data, whether it's location data or other data in mobile, to be different than today?
Yeah, I think that we'll have a much better understanding of the mobile ecosystem and the people moving about and how to match their behavior and their intent with advertising and marketing dollars.
And before I give Bill the final word here in our panel, any other questions or comments for our group? Or Pro, we got one in the back. Yeah, please. Hold on one second. I think we're going to get you a mic.
Hi, my question is about Twitter. I just read today about an advertising deal between
Can you
Twitter.
can you hold that a little closer? We're having trouble hearing you up here.
Okay. I just read today about an advertising deal between Twitter and a subsidiary of Publicis. And I just wonder what your thoughts are in terms of advertising in Twitter.
Any of our panelists have any thoughts about advertising in Twitter?
We currently don't do any advertising in Twitter. We've done a little bit of research on it. It's a very interesting medium for us. For our demographic of our users, it skews a little bit older than we'd like to. I personally buy my own Twitter ads, so I'm testing it out on my own. But it's interesting. It's new. MX loves it, so we're trying to figure out how we can work with them to do something more with it.
Facebook and Twitter have always been at odds with each other in terms of social. We work with both companies in terms of promoting apps and app installs. And Twitter recently came out with Twitter cards as well. And so in both manners, we work with the companies. It's predominantly becoming an important part of everyone's business here because social is a big component, which I was speaking about before. So it should be taken into consideration.
Did I miss anybody else? So Bill, final words. What should everybody in this room be thinking about over the next couple of years? Wrap it up for us.
Interesting point. I would have to guess that 2/3 of the people in this room have an iPhone. We're seeing explosive growth in the Android. Everybody knows this data. They're outgrowing iOS. I feel that most of the agencies and most of the money being spent on digital still funnels iOS first before Android. And I actually think that's going to change over the next 2 years.
Great. Well, thanks everybody for joining us, and enjoy the rest of the day.